This week, I'm kicking it old school on the Nintendo Switch with Bush League Hockey. So like I said, I'm firing up the Nintendo Switch this week and I'm checking out Bush League Hockey from V7 Entertainment. This game originally released in 2017 on PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Now we're checking out the Nintendo Switch, just released this past year. And let me tell you, this game is the retro feels all the way. This is scratched at that nostalgia itch that I have from NHLPA 93 back in the days when I was a kid and I played that game non-stop. So I was excited to jump into Bush League Hockey on the Nintendo Switch just to see what this game was all about. My expectations weren't super high as far as what I was going to get as far as gameplay, graphics, things like that. This is a retro game and everything there kind of follows. The graphics are retro, the presentation is retro, the controls are retro. We'll get into that a little bit later. But let me tell you, my first impressions of the game are actually pretty good. It gives me that 70s hockey feel. We're jumping into rural Canada with some of these teams we're playing as. There's two available game modes, exhibition and story mode. So when I first jumped in, they give you kind of a quick tutorial of how the controls go. There's two different schemes. There's the classic scheme, which is just directional and a 2-button pass and shoot control, just like the old school hockey games. And then there's also an advanced controls, which uses the sticks a little bit more and the paddles. And that's one of those things that you're just going to want to maybe try to practice before you can get into a little bit better. That being said, I personally chose the advanced controls. That's how I play NHL games today. So it was just more comfortable for me, and I did want to try out the advanced controls with a retro game just to kind of see how those played out. And let me tell you, things were a little clunky on the control end of things. Again, I try to kind of preface always, this is a retro game. I shouldn't be expecting a full-on simulation. It is arcade style. Things are going to be a little bit clunky at times, especially with this retro feel to the game. So, it was a little bit difficult to get into with the advanced controls because the tutorial that isn't really a playthrough tutorial, it's just a read-through tutorial, gives up cards on the screen with information for the different controls for the advanced controls, and I found that to be a little bit confusing, at least to try to put into the gameplay as far as remembering all the different moves that they give you. It was a little bit to get used to, so I found the exhibition mode really good for that. And one of the things I ran into when loading up the games was the load times. They were really long for a game that I expected kind of quick load times. I mean, I guess I'm, a little spoiled nowadays with PCs and the way Xboxes and PS5s are, things are very quick. So maybe I'm just, a little impatient on that end, but it did seem like it took longer than it should, to the point where I actually thought the game crashed a couple of times. But if the music didn't stop playing, I probably would have restarted the console, but the music kept on playing. So I thought, you know what, it must be loading still. And eventually the games did pop up. So it was there. Kind of a weird thing I noticed, especially early on in the game. The exhibition mode was very helpful for being able to learn those advanced controls and kind of playing through. And then I jumped into the story mode, which, was done pretty well. The presentation of this was done good. You're kind of a struggling hockey team that's looking to make the playoffs, and honestly, you're just going out there giving it your best, and unfortunately, not every night you're going to bring home that win. And early on in this game, your team starts with pretty well zero statistics, so every time the visiting team shoots, it's usually a goal. You don't always have to win the games. There's objectives for each game in story mode, and some of those objectives range from anywhere of just hitting certain players on the ice to getting so many passes, only allowing so many shots on goal, certain things like that. They kind of, they change up every game. Some of them are harder than others. I found, the ones to be the easiest where you just have to hit a certain player that's marked on the ice. You only have to do it once. You don't even have to win these games. It's just completing as many objectives as possible will help you actually upgrade your team as you go. And they do kind of a nice job because you can play 4-player co-op in this game, whether it's all local, whether it's in exhibition or even the story mode. You can jump in and play with multiple people on the same teams, which is actually a ton of fun. And that's something I think that may get overlooked in this game, even though this retro aspect of the game is kind of bringing you back to where you used to sit down in front of your TV with, one or two of your friends and playing these games. So it's nice to see that this was an addition in there, even if it's not something that's necessarily going to be picked up, especially on the Nintendo Switch, though. I think it gives it the best opportunity for people to jump in and play together. But again, this is a retro game through and through. There were things about this game that I just struggled with. I'm so used to playing the NHL of present day that when I jump back into these retro games, yeah, it's nice to be there. The nostalgia kind of rushes back, and you do have a little bit of fun with it. It was presented well, like I said, but I just feel like, retro games are meant to be in the past for a reason. It's fun to bring them back up, but they're just not games you tend to want to stick with. I come to the end of my time with Bush League Hockey with kind of mixed feelings. I really wanted to like this game. I love the retro styling, the presentation, the voiceovers, the music were done excellent. There's enough here to keep you really, engaged as far as wanting to play a retro hockey game, but the controls and the graphics and just how certain things work as far as mechanics in the game, you just really realize that retro games are in the past for a reason. And honestly, it's just, I wanted this game to be a little more fun than it was. It's not a game I'm necessarily going to spend a ton of time playing. I may jump in with some friends at times, may play this through the story mode once, but honestly, it's not one I'm going to keep picking up and jumping back into. So if I've got to score Bush League Hockey out of 10, I'm going to give this one a 6.
Taking time to get back up to Keister on a breakaway. Fenton shoots it low, and it goes wide.
A retro hockey game that pulls you back into the days of rough and rowdy hockey. Good voiceovers and an authentic soundtrack, but unfortunately you run into long load times and clunky controls that really keep this one in the past.
His face after only a few shots. That was an ugly stick right to the head. Forget